So welcome back, and let's begin with round 1. So for all your rounds, you're going to start with your border, okay? And your border is based on how you decided to customize it. So for my border, I decided to do 4 garter stitches and then 8 purl stitches on the right side, okay? So I'm going to do that, and then you do the border that you intended to do. And then after the border, we're going to work on the pattern, which I will show you how to do that. Okay, so for my border, I did 4 garter stitches to begin. So I'm going to insert my hook and do 4 garter stitches. And remember, the garter stitches are simply row 1, knit 1 across, and row 2, knit 1 across. Two, 3, 4. So that's my garter stitches, and then 8 purl stitches. So I'm going to bring the yarn over and begin with 8 purl stitches. 1, 2, 3, 7, and 8. Okay. So that's the border, okay? So over here, I did this so far. Now we're going to work in the pattern, and then we're going to finalize with our border once again, okay? So now I'm on the pattern. So at this point, what I like to do is separate my borders from the pattern using a stitch marker, just so it's easier to count the stitches later on. Okay? So for my stitch markers, I'm kind of lazy, so I just take a piece of yarn and just put it into a knot like that to create a stitch marker. Okay, so take a piece of yarn and just do a double knot to create a hole. Like that. Okay, and then just cut off the excess string. And that creates a simple stitch marker. Okay, so you need 2. So take your first one and just slip it onto here, and that's going to separate our border from the pattern. So now we're going to work on the pattern. So the pattern, we're going to start off by yarning over and knitting 4. So to yarn over, you're going to bring your yarn to the back as if you're going to knit. And you're going to take your yarn, you're going to wrap it from the front up, down, around like that, okay? One more time, it's in the back, I'm going to bring it up, around, like that. And that's going to create an increase. That's going to create an extra stitch right there. And then we're going to knit 4. So knit 1. See, as you can see, we have our knit 1 here, and we have our increased stitch right there, okay? So that was knit 1, knit 2, knit 3, and knit 4, okay? And as you can see, our stitch marker separates our border from the pattern. So now we're going to do, after we knit 4, we're going to do an Ssk decrease. So an Ssk decrease, so in this pattern we have 2 decreases. We've got an Ssk and we've got a knit 2 together. The reason we're doing two different types of decreases is because what it does is the Ssk decrease slides over to the left like that, and then knit 2 together decreases lean over to the right like that. And using those 2 different elements allows us to create the pattern in this table runner, okay? So we're going to begin with an Ssk decrease. That is slip, slip, knit, and I will show you. So we're going to take the next 2 stitches and we're going to slip it onto our right needle. So insert your needle as if you're going to do a knit, slip it on. Take the next stitch, insert your needle as if you're going to do a knit, slip it on like that. And then you're going to bring the needle, bring the 2 stitches back onto your first needle here from the back. Okay, so insert from the back, one, from the back, the other. And what that does is it changes the direction of the stitch. And that's all we're doing. We're changing the direction of the stitch. And then we're going to knit. So we did our slips, and now we're going to knit two together. So insert your hook, insert your needle from the back. Let's try and grab these two stitches here. Okay, so here we have our two stitches. We insert our needle from the back as if we're going to do a knit, and just complete a knit. Like that. And that creates an SSK. Okay? Now just a little tip for the SSK, just to make it more clear if you're still a bit confused about it. So if you look at our stitches here, right? Each of the stitches currently they go this way, right? They lean towards the left. And with our SSK, what it does, it reverses that leaning way. So as you can see our stitches here, and when we switch the stitch over, you see, we changed it, right? And then when we bring it back onto the needle, as you can see, it changes. So this is our, this is our normal stitch. This is the one that we switched for our SSK. And all you do is you do your knit, and that creates your SSK, right? So we're essentially changing the direction of the current stitch, and that's going to change the direction of our decreases. Okay? So I'm going to show you once again over here. So once you're done your SSK, we're going to do purl 8, but I'm just going to show you an SSK here, and then I'm going to reverse just to give you another idea of how it's done, okay? So slip, slip, knit. So we just did our SSK. I'm making it clear, do not do it a second time. I'm just showing you how it's done with these next two stitches, but then I'm going to reverse it, okay? So slip, slip, insert your hook from the back, and then slip the two stitches back onto your needle. The first row is always difficult because it's so tight. And then insert your needle to the back like that. I did it all in one sweeping motion. Once you get the hang of it, you'll be able to do that as well. And then we're going to knit, and that's our SSK. Okay, so I'm just going to reverse the stitches now, back to how they previously were. Okay, and there we go. Okay, so our stitches are back to normal. So these two stitches, I just did the second SSK, which I said do not do that. I just did it to show you how it's done again. And I put the stitches back onto normal. All right, so just to be clear, I hope I didn't confuse you. We have the pattern. We did our yarn over right here. We did our 1, 2, 3, 4 knits. We did our SSK right here, and we are on to the next part. So that is purl 8. Okay, so I'm going to show you here. So we did this part here, and now we're going to purl 8. And then for the pattern, after we purl 8, we're going to reverse. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to do our decrease. We're going to do our yarn over. Our yarn over, by the way, creates these lacy holes. That's why we do the yarn over. And then we are going to do our border. Okay, so you do it one way, and then you do it reverse the second way. Again, so that's what the pattern is. So now we're going to purl 8. Okay, so bring your yarn forward and begin to do a purl 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like that. Okay. Now after we purl 8, we're going to knit 2 together. So your yarn is in the front. We're going to bring it to the back as if we're going to do a knit. And then we are going to do a knit 2 together decrease. So to do that, take the next 2 stitches right here, insert your needle into this stitch right here, into both stitches actually. as if you're going to do a knit stitch. Okay, like that. Okay, like this, and we're going to knit. Oops, knit. One more time. There we go. Okay, so we just did a knit 2 together decrease. And now we are going to do knit 4. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we are going to yarn over. Now for this yarn over, only in round 1, we will do a different yarn over. For all the remaining yarn overs for this pattern up to row 18, we will do the yarn over that we did at the beginning over here, which is from the top down and around like that. The other yarn over that we're going to do is the purl yarn over, simply because at this point here, the next stitch we're going to do is our border, and our border, when we do it at the end here, we're going to do our 8 purls and then our garter stitch at the end here, right? So in the case of me, it's my 8 purls, right? You will do the number of purls that you decided to do. But because it is a purl stitch, we have to do a different purl yarn over, right? So I'm going to call this yarn over that we did over here a knit yarn over, and I'm going to call this yarn over that we're going to do now a purl yarn over. So for the purl yarn over, instead of going from the top to the bottom like that, with our yarn in the back, we're going to bring our yarn to the front. Bring your yarn to the front like this. So once we bring our yarn over, we're going to wrap it around from the top to the bottom. Okay, like that, so in the opposite direction, and that creates our yarn over right here, right? So that yarn over there. And then we're going to insert our stitch marker, just so it's easier for us to keep track of. And then we're going to do our purls for our border. Okay, so in the border, once again, I'm doing 8 purls. You'll do the number of purls that you decided to do. So do a purl stitch like that, and I will show you. So that creates our purl right here. And then here is our yarn over stitch right here. Okay, so that's 1 purl. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And at the end, so now that I'm done my purls, I have 4 stitches left over for my garter stitch. So I'm going to bring the yarn back around to the back as if I'm doing a knit. And then I'm going to do my garter stitch, which is knits. 1 knit, 2, 3, and 4. And that finishes row 1, okay? Like that. So here we are on round 2, and for round 2 and all even rows for the remaining of the pattern, so rows 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, and 18, we are going to, quote-unquote, knit the stitches as presented. So what that means is that when you see a knit stitch, you're going to knit it, and when you do a purl stitch, you're going to purl it, okay? So we're not going to do any new elements in these even rows. Okay, so row 2, 4, 6, 8, etc. There's no new elements to our even rows. Okay? So the rule is knit the stitch as presented. So we're going to knit where we see a knit, and we're going to purl where we see a purl. So that's for all even rows, just to be clear. Okay? So we're on row 2, so row 1, we turn our work over, we are on row 2. So let's begin with our border again. So here's our border. We have our, for my pattern, for my border, I did 4 garter stitches. So the garter stitch is for every row, just knit, right? So I'm going to knit as I see it. And then over here, it's kind of difficult to see, but in row 1 we did a purl stitch, our 8 pearls. So when we reverse it, our pearls become knits. So knit as we see it. So we see knits, we're going to knit them. Okay, so let's do that. So I'm going to begin with my garter stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4 knits, sorry. Okay. And then we're going to knit and purl as we see it. So we see our pearls here, our knits here. Okay, so we're going to continue to knit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay. So my border is now complete. Once you've done your border, we're going to move on to the pattern part. So move your stitch marker over, and let's begin the pattern part. So the rule: knit as we see it, purl as we see it. Okay, so the first is our yarn over. Okay, so the yarn over, we did it. So the easiest way to look at the yarn over to see if it's a purl or a knit is to just, for me, this is how I do it. I just look at the next stitch. The next one is a purl. So I'm just going to continue. So I'm going to do the yarn over as if it were a purl stitch. Okay, that's just makes it easy for me. Okay, so I'm going to purl. Bring my yarn over. Take our yarn over right here and do a purl stitch like that. The next one is a purl. I'm going to purl it. The next one is a purl. The next one is a purl. Okay. So, and how many purls do we have? The next one is a purl. Okay. And the final one, this one here, is our SSK. So that was a slip slip knit. So just like over here, when we do a purl and we flip it over to a row 2, it becomes a knit. So when we did a knit here and we flip it over to row 2, it becomes a purl. As you can see, the purl bump right over there. So we're going to purl it. Okay, insert your needle and purl that stitch. Try that again. Purl, there we go. Okay. Let's look at our next stitch. What do we have? We have knits. So this now, from row 1, was our 8 purl stitches from the pattern that we did. When we flip it over to row 2, they become knits. So we're going to knit 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, like that. Now, look at our pattern. What do we have? We have purls. So this combines from row 1, the knit 2 together, right? Row 1, the knit 2 together, the knit 4, and the yarn over. Okay? So when we go to round 2, we flip it over, they become purls. So we're going to do our purl. That was our knit 2 together. Now we're going to do our purl for our knit 4s from previous one. 1, 2 purls, 3 purls, 4 purls. And then finally we have our increase, our yarn over increase. Now the way I want to look at this is the same way I did over here. I want to just look at the next stitch. What's my next stitch? My next stitch is a knit. Alright, so the next part here is the border. From row 1 we have our purl 8s and our garter stitch. When we flip it over to row 2 we have those purl become knits and we have our garter stitch. So I want to look at the next one. So the next one is a knit. So I'm going to treat this increased yarn over that we did, and I'm going to do it as a knit, and I'm going to do it into a knit stitch. So insert your needle from the back as if you're going to do a knit, and do a knit like that. So now here we are on our border. We're just going to continue that. So we have our 8 purls from row 1 become 8 knits, so we're going to knit them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Oops. Like that. And then we have left over our 4 garter stitches. So I'm going to knit those. 1, 2, 3, and 4, like that. So that completes row 2.